Speak Your Mind Radio is an internet radio community on DLive, broadcasting abducted child alerts, missing person cases, and bringing breaking and top news to you affecting our world, along with music and talk radio. Thanks for listening.
This webcaster uses Radio Amber, the Internet Radio Amber Alert System, helping to keep your children safe. A public service from the Internet broadcasting community and this station.
Hello everybody and good evening. Welcome to my channel. If you've subscribed already, thank you very much. I appreciate it. If you do like this channel and this video, please subscribe and share this video everywhere on your social media that you can share. I want to bring attention to this case. It really needs it, and it's really sad. And this is the infuriating case of James Ryker Biel. During a contentious custody battle between James's mother, Kara Witkowski, and his father, Thomas Biel, Kara missed a court appearance due to an error on her attorney's part. And in her absence, the judge granted Tom full custody. 3 months later, James was brought to the hospital to be treated for a prolapsed rectum, so severe that it required surgery and 9 separate hospital admissions during that single month. Just weeks after that, shortly after James's 2nd birthday, James died under suspicious circumstances. The very next day, even before an autopsy was completed, the police department at Palatine, Illinois, announced that foul play was not suspected. The state's autopsy was inconclusive, but even after a second independent autopsy revealed that James died from an unexplained spinal cord injury. To date, no investigation has been opened into James's death. Kara, however, is not allowing the death of her son to be brushed under the rug. People, please help Kara Witkowski and sign the petition. That link will be in the description of this video along with the group to bring the Palatine Police Department to open the death investigation into James Ryker Biel. I also like to let you know that all the videos and graphics used in this video belong to their respective owners, and me nor this channel claim any rights to them. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to do the recording first. This was pre-recorded. I'm going to go over a few documents and whatnot and a little bit about the story, and then we're going to go into an interview with Kara, the mother of James Ryker Biel. It was done on Unmasked back on July 12th. And I was asked to be able to keep spreading this and sharing this, so I thought I would put this on my YouTube channel. I do have permission from the owners of Unmasked to be able to do this interview and to show that interview, excuse me, I'm sorry. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee, grab a tea, whichever you like, and let's listen to what's going on. Let's get started.
Tonight's true crime story is about justice for James. DCFS and the family courts there in Kane County, Illinois, is corrupt. There is corruption. This is what's going to be talked about tonight. But before I start off with this, I will have a few documents I want to share with you first, and then we'll get into the story, and then we'll have an interview with the mother done by Unmasked, a true crime syndicate. This is all in the Justice for James Facebook group, okay? So please join and show your love for James by sharing and spreading awareness to this case, as we do. And please sign the petition to help reopen this case. Now, the first document I want to show you, which is, in a sense, it's good news. So the first document is the father has been arrested. He was arrested on July 22nd. I just found this out as I was just after I started recording this that you're going to be hearing. So, but I wanted to get that out. James Ryker Biel's father has been arrested for criminal sexual assault and force, but is out on bond. When James died at 2 years old with a prolapsed rectum on October 31st, 2019, the sexual abuse was dismissed. His mother, Kara Witkowski, has been a force asking for accountability in the death of her son. She became vocal on social media and planned rallies to raise the awareness of the crimes against her son, her, and her parenting rights to protect her son and daughter from abuse. And her grandfather's home is where she's at, okay? But he gets to go to see her. This is so appalling, what you're going to hear tonight. I could not believe that this is going on. But this is, I could not do the interview because it was, things in there is just so appalling. It brought tears to my eyes. I was angry. I could not do this interview, so I got permission from Unmasked that did it to use this interview in this video, because where I want to raise the awareness to this, and we need to get this law changed, because in the state of Illinois, child pornography, okay, a person can only be charged with possession of child pornography in 3 years. After that, there's nothing that can be done. So, and there was a hard drive. I'm also going to be showing you that document too, that had images of prepubescent children on that hard drive. So, now I'm going to read a little bit about this, because I'm going to be showing you shortly here a clip from the protest done by the mother of James Ryker Biel, who was found non-responsive on the grandfather's bed on October 31st of 2019. So just to give you an overview of how big this is. This is a discharge record from the hospital for August 19th, 2019. And it says rectal prolapse is a rare finding among young children and may be due to a variety of etiologies, including significant constipation and straining dysfunctional stooling patterns, underlying medical diagnosis like IBD, polyps, neurologic abnormalities, infections, and trauma. Per report from OSH at the time of initial evaluation of prolapse, no identified injuries were noted on exam, which does not exclude the possibility of sexual abuse. Retro trauma caregivers have reported constipation history and large stools straining, which reportedly occurred prior to initial prolapse. No polyps or other abnormalities seen during surgical procedure at OSH, including sigmoidoscopy. Certainly, there are environmental concerns that may increase risk for maltreatment. Multiple prior DCFS and police reports, history of domestic violence, report to DCFS regarding father accessing child pornography, prior allegations of sexual abuse which have been unfounded. While this presentation of a rectal prolapse is not specific to sexual abuse, penetrative rectal trauma remains a consideration. We'll follow results of STI testing and have communicated with DCFS law enforcement that if any results indicate infection or if sibling makes a disclosure that increases the likelihood of abuse, further recommendations assessment may be made. Please page with questions. Now, this was the attending physician that you see right there, Division of Child Abuse Pediatrics. She says, I have spent 40 minutes in consultative discussion and review of data in the medical record. Greater than 50% of this time was spent on medical consultative discussion regarding diagnostic, evaluation, follow-up, and coordination of care. So, with all that said from the hospital, Larry's children, it says it's all there. So, how is it that Palatine won't reopen the case? How is it that they ever thought this was a natural death in the first place, with even the possibility that somebody sexually assaulted without going through every possibility? I don't get it. They didn't do all those checks. And even when they were notified, they didn't do it. DCFS, law enforcement, how can you guys state that you have no credible evidence in regards to child abuse when they have evidence of a cervical spinal cord injury and an incarcerated prolapsed rectum the size of an orange? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard right. The size of an orange with no explanation? How's that? That's what we want to know. That's what Kara wants to know. And here's another document pertaining to the pornographic images on the hard drive they found. Okay, on the narrative, this is just a second part of the narrative, so basically, several times since Biel had not accessed the hard drive for many years, he said. Biel was unaware of where it had been located. However, he had been advised by a friend that Witkowski had located it in the trunk of their shared vehicle. Biel advised that he had no way of knowing who had accessed to the hard drive during the time period or during the time that it was in These's possession, which is a friend of his, but he no longer did not have any contact information for These because they were no longer friends. And then it was directly asked by Biel if he was sexually stimulated by images of young girls in their underwear, anime images of adults engaged in sexual acts with children, or anything that could be considered child pornography under this applicable Illinois laws. Biel advised that he considered those types of images to be obscene and would receive absolutely no sexual gratification from viewing them. Biel advised that if necessary, he would be willing to turn over his own personal laptop computer, as well as any other electronic devices that he currently had in his possession, in order to provide the further evidence that he did not have any of those types of materials in his possession. Why were they in the car? Biel advised that although the hard drive had been located in the trunk of the vehicle which he shared with Witkowski, that the hard drive was solely his property. Biel advised that Witkowski could have accessed the hard drive at any time and found it suspicious that Witkowski located obscene images days after making sexual assault allegations against him. And it wasn't really sexual assault, it is rape. You hear in there what he had done to her. I consider it rape, not sexual assault. It was forced on her. And that's what he's being charged with now, is the sexual assault and force. So that's one good thing, he's got arrested for that. He's out on bail right now. Hope he doesn't run. Well, if he's innocent, he's not going to run. If he does, he's not innocent. I say he is guilty. He's just trying to cover up stuff. That's my opinion. Now, cross-reference Elgin Case Report 19-17618. Biel requested that if there was anything obscene in nature stored on the hard drive, that the hard drive be destroyed. Now, on this hard drive, they had found. Now, this is from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. How their category falls into the following is they follow into three categories: identified child, recognized, and unrecognized. The identified child, these exact hash values are associated with an image, video which appears to depict at least one child previously identified by law enforcement. Please be advised that these hash values may be associated with apparent child pornography images, videos, as well as files that do not contain apparent child pornography. And there was 47 of them identified. There was the ones that were identified were 47. There was 422 recognized. Now, the recognized, these exact hash values are associated with files previously submitted to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children Child Recognition and Identification System. However, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has no additional information regarding these files, which may or may not contain apparent child pornography or depict identified children. As a result, these hash values will not be listed in the PDF version of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children Initial Hash Value Comparison Report. And the unrecognized hash values are these exact hash values are associated with images, videos that have not yet been submitted to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's Recognition and Identification System. So there was 280 of them that has not been submitted yet. 422 were recognized and 47 were identified as children. Detective Carter uploaded the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's report as an attachment to this report. Detective Carter created a digital report containing the images and videos of interest as marked by Detective Phillips and a section identifying the images determined by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children hash submission as identified child. Now, Kara also stated that all the content on this hard drive was his. The material greatly concerned the prosecutor assigned to the case. 5 of the images, no longer 3, were considered child pornography. The only reason my ex was not charged with child pornography is due to the fact that there is a 3-year statute in Illinois regarding photographs. This extends to the Attorney General. This pornography was all confirmed to be my ex's. All the little girls whose privates were exposed or were in just their underwear were apparent prepubescent children. Wow. Now on to Judge Dalton. He was the judge that completely mishandled the case for little baby James. I found a few interesting articles online about him. I think you would like to know. And I also found a speech that he was giving during when he was running for the 16th Circuit Court. There we go. I'm sorry, I can't even think straight tonight. And yeah, this is what he had to say. I'm going to play that, and then I'm going to read you those articles that I found on him.
Hi, I'm John Dalton. I'm running for Circuit Court Judge. I'm running for judge because this community has given me a great deal, and I want to give back. I'm asking for your vote because I believe the role of a judge is to be nonpartisan, to follow the law, to treat everyone fairly, with dignity and respect. And if I'm fortunate enough to be elected the next judge of Kane County, that's the kind of judge that I will be. I'm John G. Dalton, and I authorized this message.
Is John Dalton. He is running for judge of Kane County. Well, as Todd said, I'm running for Kane County resident judge, and I get asked a lot, what does that mean? It's a circuit court judge.
and only a resident of Kane County can run for it, and only the residents of Kane County can vote for that judge. But at the end of the day, it's a circuit court judge for the 16th Circuit, which is 3 counties, Kane, Kendall, and DeKalb. So I'll save you one of the questions during the question and answer by telling you that up front. I'd like to talk a little bit about my background and my qualifications for office. I usually start with my education, and most of you, I think, are probably from the Tri-Cities. I come from Elgin, and up in Elgin, there's a small little pizza place that's been there for about 30 years called Danny's Pizza. It was built by my parents. My father, my late father, Danny Dalton, really transmitted a love of learning to me. And it took me a long time to understand what that was all about. I followed his lead. I took that encouragement. I worked very hard in school. I earned essentially straight A's in high school, college, and law school. Graduated magna cum laude from Augustana College and magna cum laude from the University of Illinois College of Law. And it was only years later that I understood what was really driving my father to push education so hard. But my father didn't graduate from high school, and my father couldn't read. And so because of that, or despite that, he pushed me to excel in an area where he had not had the opportunities that he wanted to give to me. And I worked very hard in school to accomplish those results, and I'm really proud of those results. That's probably the first qualification that I can tell you about for the bench. I'm an attorney for 23 years. I've practiced with some of the world's most prestigious law firms, Skadden Arps, Slate-Maker & Flom, Rothschild, Berry & Meyer. I've also practiced with some of the world's largest companies like Sears. And I've had my own tiny little sole practitioner firm where I had no employees, and it was just me. I've represented every kind of conceivable client, from the pro bono client who can't afford anything for a lawyer to the world's largest companies with the matters of the gravest import involving many millions of dollars, all the way down to small claims cases. I think that the record for me is $140.62. I handled every single one of those cases the same way. I worked just as hard for that $140 case as I did for those multi-million-dollar cases, because every client deserves the same thing from their attorney, deserves their best. I'm going to bring that same work ethic to the bench if I'm fortunate enough to win a majority of votes on November 2nd. Judges come in every day, they keep an open mind, they listen to the evidence, and they decide cases, meat and potatoes kinds of cases. These are not the partisan issues that divide us along party lines. Whether this guy over here is guilty of a DUI or he isn't, either way, it isn't a partisan matter, is it? All I can tell you is the kind of judge I would be. I can tell you a little bit about myself for you to try to gauge that. I can tell you that I believe in precedent, in tradition. I believe in hard work and personal responsibility. I believe in the possibility of grace and redemption. I believe that the role of a judge is to be nonpartisan, follow the law, and treat every single person with dignity and respect. Now that's not some slogan. I really mean that. I'm going to say it again. I believe the role of a judge is to be nonpartisan, follow the law, and treat every single person with dignity and respect. And if I'm fortunate enough to be the next judge in Kane County, that's the kind of judge that I'll be. Thank you very much.
What a pathetic joke. Follow the law. Treat everyone fairly with dignity and respect. Well, you didn't do that for James's mother. You gave James to a pedophile. Now that child is dead. And the sister is still in danger. Now, tonight in that interview with Kara Witkowski on Unmasked, you will hear how the judge removed himself from Kara's case. And the reason, I guess, he couldn't be fair to her or something like that. Later on, he did, excuse me, later on he was completely removed from family court. This article here I'm going to read shows that he wasn't very liked. It's not just Kara's situation here. So let me read it to you, okay? Breaking news. Judge Dalton is being removed from family court. Kane County Kane County Judge John Dalton's family court reign of terror is almost over. On January 24th, 2021, he will be removed to Civil Courtroom 250, which handles evictions, property arbitration cases. The 16th Circuit can't get rid of him because he's an elected judge, but this transfer can only be considered a major demotion for a judge of his tenure. Interesting, right? Maybe for doing crap like what you did, taking that baby the way you took him, and putting him in completely harm's way. Anyway, they went on to say what that means is if you have a date in courtroom 101 before the 24th, then you or your attorney need to file a motion for continuance ASAP so you can get out from under this utter waste of flesh and appear before the as yet to be determined new family court judge. And at that time it was Judge Renee Cruz. And getting to Judge Renee Cruz, okay, I will get to that in a minute, but I did also find something more on Judge John Dalton. It seems that him and his significant male other doesn't know how to follow municipal code. This is from the Capital Gazette, and it says, this is March 5th in 2016, is when this article was written. An adjudicator recently ordered that Kane County Judge John Dalton and his male significant other, Rich Jacobs, must pay a $250 fine for the keeping a recreational vehicle in their Elgin home's driveway in violation of city code. Last spring, which would have been, February, March, around that time of 2015, someone filed a complaint about the RV being kept in the driveway for an extended period of time in violation of city code. The city has not released the name of the complainant. The ticket eventually was issued in August. That's 6 months later. Why would it take 6 months, okay? According to a document issued by February 29th by Administrative Hearing Officer Mark Schuster that the Courier News obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request, Dalton and Jacobs were found liable for the offense of parking a commercial vehicle in violation of the City of Elgin Municipal Code. Schuster ordered Dalton and Jacobs, who is District Director for State Senator Michael Nolan of Elgin, to pay the $250 fine. Wow. Something that takes 6 months to get a ticket out too. Who knows if he even paid it or not? He probably did. But this just shows how this judge is. He has no regard, for if it's him violating something, or if it's a male that's violating something, they get lesser. You know what I'm saying? They get a lesser charge or whatnot. He hates women. Kara even mentions that she was treated really bad by this judge. So rude, whatnot. And there's comments that I found on a site that I will be sharing probably after the interview, or maybe it'll probably come out in the interview. I'm not too sure. But anyways, I feel everything he touched needs to be reinvestigated. Everything he touched. Something made them demote this man. Everybody else can't be wrong. Family court judge? No longer. Oh my God, but he's handling evictions? There's always people there. He just needs to not deal with people. He did what he did involving James. Then this man is just no good anyway. I thought it would be cool to share that. We don't like the bad guys around here, do we now? Okay, now on to my next one here, and this will probably be the last one. This is Renee Cruz. Now, he was the presiding judge that worked along with Judge Dalton. Mysteriously, he decided to leave his prestigious position. Now, this was it came right after the Kane County District Attorney Joseph McMahon steps down immediately after mishandling the rape investigation of James Ryker Biel's mother. Now, this is the investigation into the child porn charges on the hard drive, which they were not extending the statute. Here's what it reads. Detective Katie Phillips requested that our office review an investigation into the possession of child pornography in connection with the above reference. Elgin Police Report Number. Your department provided me with police reports that were generated as a result of this investigation and a DVD containing the results of a forensic examination of an external hard drive given to the Elgin Police Department by Kara Witkowski on March 28, 2019. Additionally, I met with Detective Phillips, Houghton, and Carter on January 17th of 2020 to discuss the case. The statute of limitation for the offense of possession of child pornography is 3 years as set forth in the general limitation provisions of the law found in 720, the Illinois court system. I believe that's what it is, Chapter 5, subsection 3 to 5B. Given the specific facts of this case, it is our office's opinion that an extended period of limitations is not applicable, based upon the interviews conducted by the police and the forensic examination. Applicable statute of limitations, period. In fact, there is evidence to suggest that other individuals had access to the external hard drive from 2015 forward. As a result, the state is barred from commencing a prosecution against the suspect in this case, and our office will not be authorizing charges of possession of child pornography. Additionally, putting the statute of limitations issue aside, there is insufficient evidence to establish probable cause that the suspect in this investigation knowingly possessed child pornography. How did that hard drive get there in the trunk? When Thomas Biel, the father, was questioned, the suspect does admit to possessing the external hard drive in 2010. Currently, there are 51,899 files and folders on the external drive. It is unknown from what source these file folders were obtained. In other words, police do not have the computer that were used to transfer all of the files folders to the external hard drive, because the detectives do not have possession of the computers or the original source of file folders. They have not been able to forensically link to the suspect, link the suspect for anyone else to placing the data on the external hard drive. Investigators also learned that the hard drive was loaned out to another individual for a period of time. After forensic review of the external hard drive, it was found to contain 740 images and 9 videos. These 740 images and 9 videos were submitted to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Determined that 47 of these images were identified children. However, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children did not indicate that these images were of child pornography, only that the images were of identified children. Three of your detectives reviewed these 47 images and concluded that 5 photographs may contain child pornography. Okay, if these photographs may contain the child pornography, why couldn't they keep this investigation open to find out more? This is how corrupt that court system there is.
This is the protest for justice for James. I'm going live now. James deserves so much more. Reopen the death investigation for James Ryker Biel.
This is Jessica. I'm with Kara right now. She's about to do walk. I took over. As you can see, we're doing the Justice for James protest peacefully. Non-violently. Y'all want to come up and join us, feel free to. We are in front of the Marianos over by the Palatine police.
Alright. Thank you everyone for coming to support. This is the Justice for James protest. We are going to march. The chant is 1, 2, 3, 4. James deserves so much more. Reopen the death investigation for James Ryker Biel. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. James deserves so much more. 3, 4. James deserves so much more. Reopen the death investigation. James Ryker Biel. 2, 3, 4. James deserves so much more. Reopen the death investigation for James Ryker Biel. Why do you support Justice for James?
He had a neck injury.
Yep.
Dad was caught with over 500.
Yep.
500 videos of children.
500 apparent prepubescent children were found on the hard drive.
There was prior allegations of abuse.
Yes, there was.
And no investigation?
No investigation! We need this investigation reopened immediately!
No. There's corruption here, obvious. It doesn't take a doctor or a rocket scientist. There's corruption.
Yes. So, April? Yes. April is here all the way from Michigan. April traveled from Michigan just to be at this protest, so I want everyone to give a huge thumbs up to April. 1, 2, 3, 4. James deserves so much more. Reopen the death investigation for James Ryker Biel. You can take it back, just don't cover the microphone.
Sorry, my bad.
Where's she from? She's my boss.
She's awesome.
Yes, she is, because she experienced all of this with me. She knew James since he was like 3 months old. 1, 2, 3, 4. James deserves so much more. Reopen the death investigation for James Ryker Biel.
Is there one here from out of state, or is there another one too?
Only the girl from Michigan. She came all the way from Michigan just to
That's awesome.
I know. 1, 2, 3, 4. James deserves so much more. Reopen the investigation. Turn out the justice. Who hands a 2-year-old over to a pedophile?
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. And tonight, you are going to be angry, appalled, and furious. This is about 2-year-old James Ryker Biel, who died under suspicious circumstances, but police won't investigate even after a second autopsy. You're going to hear the story from Kara Witkowski.
I'm here at the Palatine Police Department. We have people joining us right now. People are trickling in. I'm so very excited to see everyone supporting James and being a part of this movement. I have with me right now somebody who would like to say why she is here. I'm going to be getting interviews from each and every person about why they're here, why they're supporting James, why this cause does matter, why everyone should be paying attention to this right now. Would you like to say your name and a little bit about why you're here?
Yes, I am here because I heard her story, and the system is very corrupt. I'm in a similar situation as hers. I had the same judge as she did, and my kids had been taken away from me, and I'm still fighting to get them back right now. So I felt her pain, and I'm here to support her.
And let's just put that judge's name on camera. Who is that judge?
Judge Dalton. I made a complaint, and we even had an appeal, and nothing has happened at all.
So right now, I'm going to be going over
That's my daughter.
to her daughter, and I'm going to ask her why she's here and why she supports James. This is a big family affair. Would you like to say your name and why you're here supporting James?
Hi, I'm Tiana. Because he's gone.
Yep.
And that matters.
Yeah. Short but sweet. It matters that he is gone. He should not be gone. He did not die of natural causes, and there needs to be an investigation. This is why we are here. This is why we are protesting. This is why we are getting together to march. Because this matters, and this doesn't just happen to my son. This happens to kids all of the time. DCFS, the police, judges that are corrupt are taking children, and these children are ending up dead or injured, and this needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. Would you like to tell everyone why you're here today supporting James?
They need to investigate the death of James.
And why do you feel that is necessary?
Because they are lying, and we need justice.
And what is she referring to? That regarding lying? She is referring to the fact that Palatine police said that they had never heard anything from my forensic pathologist regarding their preliminary findings. I have an email from that forensic pathologist specifically stating that she talked to them and she gave her preliminary findings. And despite that, the preliminary findings were not even listed in the Palatine police report. Let's not forget they also closed the investigation after it had not even been 24 hours. Oh, I'm sorry, not closed the investigation. They had said that there was no foul play, so they might as well have closed the investigation. So, thank you, sir, for supporting James. Why are you here supporting James?
To get the corruption out of DCFS.
Do you want to take your mask off so we can hear you better?
To root out the corruption in DCFS and change their policies, make them be accountable for their bad actions.
Very true. Thank you so much for sharing. Would you like to give your name and why you're here supporting James?
Hello, my name is Amanda Byers from DCFS Undercover. I'm here for Justice for James, to reform the law within the justice system, DCFS system, other child protective agencies, because no child should die on our watches. Not one child, and especially with professional individuals who are there to protect and keep children safe. We all need to be supporting Kara. We all need to be supporting Justice for James. We've got to light this up. We've got to stand together. Say it louder, shout it out. Say it more clear, folks.
Justice for James.
Amen.
So what we're doing now is we're allowing people to trickle in right now. We're giving a chance to do interviews and talk to everyone about why they are here. We will be starting a march very shortly. Probably about 5 o'clock we will start marching around, and I do have chance. If you cannot be here physically, you can be here with us spiritually. You can be with us here through this live stream. And so I will let you know those chants. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. James deserves so much more. 5, 6, 7, 8. Palatine police need to investigate. The other chant is James Biel died. Palatine police lied. So right now I'm in the process of trying to cross the street so that I can talk to more people and interview them on why they are here supporting this cause and why this cause matters. right. Thank you so much for joining the protest today. Would you like to say who you are and why you're here? You can take the mask off.
My name is Jordan Hansen. I am here in support of my friend and her fallen son, unfortunately. I feel like this is a very tragic thing and that the police will not do anything about it. And I'm here to help however I can.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your support. Honestly, any way you can help is just by sharing our story, is telling people what is going on, talking about the corruption in DCFS, talking about the corruption in Palatine Police Department. Obviously, people want to defund the police for a reason, and this is one of the reasons they won't even investigate the death of a 2-year-old boy. Who does that? You know he has a spinal cord injury, and you won't even investigate what caused the spinal cord injury and who is suffering because of that. A little girl who is in the care of the man whose custody he was in during that spinal cord injury. That is who is suffering. Thank you so much, sir, for joining the protest today. Would you like to say, first of all, that you came out of state and who you are and why you're here?
I'm David Tooley. I came from Missouri. Into child porn cases for a long time. And as it would have it, Thomas Biel was collecting a bunch of it. And I'm not going to have it. I'm not going to say nothing. We had a problem several years ago, if you guys remember the congressional shooting. That gentleman was also a foster parent. So are we going to do nothing and wait for Thomas Biel to go kill a bunch of politicians like Hodgkinson did? Or are we going to do something about it? Nancy, pull up.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, he was referring to a case that is similar to mine where there was another tragic loss. And again, this was through the Palatine Police Department. David Tooley, you can look at him on Facebook. He posts a lot about the case that he just discussed. I'm going to be crossing the street again to speak with more people that are here in support of James. You know, if you have any questions at this point or you want to hear anything from any of the speakers who just spoke, please let me know, make a comment. And it's exactly true. Children do not just die, especially a 2-year-old child that was perfectly healthy does not just die. And currently we see a major movement for Save Our Children. Well, this is part of this. This is saving our children. You cannot just post a hashtag and say you're saving our children. You need to be out here. You need to be protesting. You need to be speaking out about the corruption and injustices that are currently going on that are causing our children so much suffering. Thank you for joining our protest today. Would you like to say why you're here?
Hi, I am here because James did not need to die. This didn't need to happen. Our law system has failed him. That's why I'm here.
And why are you here?
I'm here because James deserved better and he deserves justice.
Thank you. Short and sweet and to the point. I do appreciate that. Right now I will be turning off the live. I am going to be doing another live at 5 o'clock when we do start our march. Right now I just wanted you all to see why people are here, why they are supporting, and how personal this is to so many people who have been wronged by the system. So thank you for joining us, and I appreciate you following the page. I appreciate you following us. I appreciate your support. Thank you.
So I'll read a little snippet here, and then there's a petition out there that I would like you to sign to help to open the investigation into the death of her son. So we'll read this part here, give you a little bit of information on what you're going to be hearing. We've seen DCS failures before. We've seen cases in which one parent is treated unfairly by the family court system, and we've seen cases in which the police are either inept or corrupt. DCYF was corrupt in my case. Rarely do we see a case in which all of those things took place simultaneously. And very rarely do we see one as egregious or infuriating as this case. I'll begin with the tragic death of a beloved little boy, James Ryker Biel, that resulted from the convergence of those factors. Trick-or-treating was over for most of the kids, who were home with their stashes of candy. By 9:50 p.m. on Thursday, October 31st, 2019, when police responded to a medical emergency in the 1300 block of East Evergreen Drive, located in the northwest suburban Palatine, Illinois. Inside the house, 2-year-old James Ryker Biel was unresponsive on his grandfather's bed, although neither the boy's grandfather, Jerry Biel, nor Jerry's wife, Helena, seemed to know what had happened to him. They said James had been on Jerry's bed playing with an electronic device when Helena left the room to take a shower. When she returned, she thought James was sleeping, but she noticed her grandson's lips were blue. James's father, 31-year-old Thomas Jerry Biel, told police he had left for work at 9:35 p.m., at which time, by his account, James was healthy and responsive because the little guy felt warm. Thomas told police he planned to take James to the pediatrician the following day. In the police report, a small red bubble is noted as coming out of James's nostril, in addition to red-colored foam present in his mouth. His tongue was also swollen and on his lip. James was rushed to the Northwest Community Hospital in the nearby city of Arlington Heights, but tragically it was too late. According to police and the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office, despite the efforts of paramedics and medical staff, James Ryker Biel, who had just celebrated his second birthday earlier that month, was pronounced dead at 10:34 p.m. James' mother, now 24 years old, Witkowski of Elgin, Illinois, later said, "Holding his lifeless body and staring into a face I knew I would never be able to breathe life into was the most painful and heart-shattering experience of her life." I can't imagine. My heart is broken reading this story. This is why I couldn't do this interview. It was just too much. You can hear it, and you'll be furious too. Within 24 hours before an autopsy was even conducted, the Palatine Police Department decided that foul play was not suspected. This story is going to get much darker and more twisted than you can imagine. And how and why could they possibly have known that without investigating? That it wasn't foul play. At the time of James's death, his mother Cara and his father Thomas were in the midst of a custody battle. Cara kept meticulous documentation, very smart, including court and medical paperwork and photographs of everything that happened to not only her, but to her children. Nonetheless, DCFS, the Palatine and Elgin Police Departments, and the Kane County Family Court System ignored her warnings, and now, as we see, and Charlie too often, her son is dead. Kara Witkowski and Thomas Biel were together for about 5 years. According to Kara, the entire relationship was fraught with domestic abuse, both physical and psychological. In August of 2018, the relationship took a turn for the worse when Thomas Kara said raped her. He told her at that time that he suffered from dissociative personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and narcissistic personality disorder. And when he assured her that he was going to see a therapist and get help, Kara, like many abuse victims, agreed to stay in the relationship and help him get help and get better. Throughout the remainder of the relationship, Thomas repeatedly threatened Kara's life and assaulted her in front of the children. Finally, on March 19, 2019, he raped and assaulted her again, which is evidenced by screenshots of messages between Kara and Thomas in which he freely admits to his crimes. And you'll see those in the interview that I'll be playing from Unmasked. I've got permission by them to be able to play that interview because I could not do this interview. It is so... when I heard it, I was so appalled. I was literally had tears in my eyes. It brought me back to that time, what happened to me. But that's another story. Kara made plans to leave Thomas, take the children and stay with some friends here in New Hampshire. When she went to work that day, Thomas somehow found out about her plans to leave, showed up at her workplace and asked her, "How could you do the one thing that would make me kill myself?" Another common tactic by a seasoned manipulator. After Kara's boss repeatedly told Thomas to leave, he did so, but he called Kara and told her that because their relationship was over, he could finally tell her the truth, confessing that he never went to therapy and he'd been lying about it all along. He also confessed that he made up his diagnosis of DID in order to continue abusing and raping her. In their messages, Kara asked if the children were in danger, and Thomas said that he was probably a greater danger to the children than to her, because he cared more about her than he did about them, essentially admitting he saw the children as property. This guy, I don't know, cystic. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and read you on this petition here. Okay, Palatine Police Department opening the death investigation into James Ryker Biel. My son, James Ryker Biel, died on October 31st of 2019. Palatine Police Department put out a press release on November 1st without an autopsy even being performed that there were no signs of foul play. This is despite my son's bleeding and foaming from his nose and mouth. A Palatine police detective involved with previous cases regarding my son's 9 hospitalizations for prolapsed rectums. Officer Layton watched as an unlicensed medical examiner did an autopsy on my son. It was well known that John Walsh did not have the necessary credentials to perform this autopsy. John Walsh also kept all of my son's neck organs as well as his heart and brain, even after his autopsy had been completed. It was mentioned to Palatine Police Detective Mike Tully, Commander Steve Bratcher, and various others that this man legally could not perform the autopsy. John Walsh ruled my son's death as an unexplained natural shortly after Palatine Police Department sent out a letter stating that they were closing their investigation. This was despite them knowing that there was a second autopsy being performed by a licensed and experienced forensic pathologist who already had relayed her preliminary findings to Detective Tully on December 31st regarding the deep tissue back bruising. The licensed forensic pathologist has now finished her exam. Through the assistance of legal aid, she was able to view James's neck organs, heart, and brain at the office of the Cook County Medical Examiner. Her findings are that James Ryker Biel's death was caused by trauma to his cervical spinal cord. It is stated in her report that more investigation is needed to confirm what caused the injury. Both Palatine Police Department and DCFS have been informed more investigation is required. The only incidents that could lead to this type of cervical spinal cord injury would be unreported car accident, fall, sports injury, or child abuse. There was never any mention of any incident in the Palatine Police report. Someone is clearly not being forthright about what happened to James Ryker Biel on the night of October 31st, 2019. And despite overwhelming evidence, Commander Steve Bratcher is refusing to reopen the investigation into James's death, knowing full well another child is in that home and the same thing could very well happen to her, because she has mentioned to her mother that her grandfather has touched her. She even mentioned that she had to literally pull out a toothbrush out of James's butt that his grandfather stuck in there. This guy is sick. Like she says, somebody needs to be arrested and somebody needs to be held accountable for the death of James Ryker Biel. You'll hear her interview from Unmasked. This is just terrible. So I'm going to take you into that interview now.
We have Kara Witkowski, which is the mother of James. So we're going to go ahead and bring her on. Hey, Kara.
Hi,
How are
Kara.
you?
Vanessa. Hi, Teresa. Thank you so much for having me. The honor is truly mine. You have an amazing channel, and I'm just so grateful that you guys would give me this opportunity and my son this opportunity to have a voice. You really are incredible people.
Oh,
You're an incredible mom.
You are
putting your whole world out there to make sure that there's justice for your baby. I commend you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me.
And you guys are about to hear how amazing Kara is and how hard she has fought. And what we're hoping for tonight, Teresa and I, is that you'll be as angry as we are, and that maybe we can get this shared everywhere. We can get, there's a link in the description for the petition. Please sign it when you hear her story, share it everywhere. We're going to post it in all the groups, all links, but just encourage you to listen to her story and help get attention and awareness out and just make some noise, like we know sometimes gets the wheels turning. So enough for me. So Kara, what we talked about before is we want to hear your story. So do you want to start back wherever you want to start? But if you want to start back from the beginning.
So in the beginning, I was 17. I had moved out of my step grandmother's place. I was going to live with one of my friends. Me and her had an apartment by Montrose in the city, which is Chicago. When I was living with her, that's when I had met Tom through a mutual friend. I was 17 at the time. He was 26. When we first started seeing each other, it was very casual. It was just kind of like friends with benefits type of deal, nothing further. I didn't really want anything that was too attached. He didn't want anything that was too attached. Little bit later, my friend who I was living with, she wanted her boyfriend to move in. I was getting closer with Tom. So Tom invited me to come stay with him because his mom had owned the building. So he had a room that I could stay in. So we were still seeing each other at this time. So I ended up moving into his mom's complex. And I lived in a separate room than Tom, and we lived with my mutual friend as well. So during this time, Tom wanted to make things exclusive with me. One of the red flags, I guess, that I can discuss here is when you watch Ted Bundy videos, or Jeffrey Dahmer, Richard Ramirez was also into this. They talk about how they had a past with BDSM, how there's sadistic tendencies, how they need a way to get those, sadistic tendencies off and stuff like that. So that was one of the things that he was interested in. And I had just really heard about the topic. I was not very experienced. My step grandmother had gotten me the 50 Shades of Grey series, so I had read a little bit into it. Nothing too, extravagant, but he was very into it, and he got into it in almost a way that was scary. So we were seeing each other. He wanted to be exclusive with me. At that time, everything was consensual. Nothing was, nothing was an assault. It was all consensual. So as we're seeing each other, we're developing more of a bond. I'm getting to know him. He's a very funny, charismatic, wonderful person, but he didn't have a job. He seemed like he wanted more for his life. So he seemed like he wanted to have a job and wanted to um, take care of himself. So I found those to be attractive qualities. At the time, he was struggling with drug addiction. He was using methamphetamines. He actually stopped using meth because he was with me. And he told me that, I was helping him not need that addiction. So he stopped using. And that was another huge thing for me because, somebody quitting an addiction and quitting a drug because of you, it meant a lot to me. I wasn't used to someone taking me in. I wasn't used to someone quitting a drug addiction for me. Like these were all things that made me feel like this man was my savior. So like if he would say jump, I would say how high, because that's how I was at that time. So like anything like he wanted to try or do, I was willing to do it to please him and to make him happy, because in my mind he was saving me. So we get past a year, so it's about a year and a half, because I found out that I was pregnant at 19. So when I found out that I was pregnant, I told him, and his entire personality just flipped. He started telling me to kill myself. He didn't want me to be pregnant. He wanted me to have an abortion. He was very angry. He's like, how could this have happened? He was blaming me. He was thinking I trapped him and everything else. And I was like, look, I understand you're scared. I'm 19. I'm scared too. We can do an open adoption. That way she can have someone who can care for her and has the monetary needs, because I only was making $10 an hour working at a chicken factory at that point. Like I didn't have a lot of income. He didn't have a lot of income. We didn't really have much. So I wanted her to have a chance at life, basically was my thinking. And we didn't know she was a girl at that point. So as my pregnancy progresses, I'm having signs where I'm thinking it's going to be a boy. Like I'm liking salty foods and, all these things they have you read about that aren't necessarily true, but it's your first pregnancy. So you're getting really excited, So I'm telling him like all these signs where I'm like, you know what, I think we're going to have a boy. I think we're going to have a boy. And his personality, again, just flips. He's like, I want a boy. I'm very excited for a boy. Now I want to raise this child with you because it's a boy. Like, this is great. So I get another job. So I now have two jobs. I was working as a personal assistant for people with like diabetes and other needs of that nature. Basically a CNA, but I was not certified at that point. So I was doing that, and I was working overnights and long hours at the chicken factory, which was Wingstop at the time. So I'm doing these two jobs while pregnant, and he's still doing nothing, just filling out applications saying he's looking for a job, yada, yada, yada. I'm believing him because I'm a 19-year-old girl who is in love with this man and thinking that he actually wants a family with me now, which no one has ever expressed that to me. And it was like, it meant a lot to me, coming from, I come from an abusive history. So all these things were totally different than what I've ever experienced. And they made me feel so whole. So I'm not thinking the worst at this point. I'm just thinking like, I want this family with him and I want everything to be okay. So then we find out that my daughter is going to be a girl, and another personality flip. I hate you. Kill yourself. Go get an abortion. I don't want a girl. I don't want someone who's going to be some stripper slut. He actually called our daughter, who was still in the womb, a stripper slut. He told me, I don't want anything to do with you. I don't want anything to do with this kid. And I was like, well, then I'm going to, I'm not going to change what I'm doing. I've built a nursery. I've done all these things. I got a second job. Like, I want to have this child. So if you don't want to have this child, then I'm going to have this child by myself and I'll figure it out, basically. And he's like, no, I don't want you to do that because she has my DNA. and you need to get an abortion. And he kept stressing to me to get an abortion. And I was not going to do that. So I wasn't backing down. So I ended up moving out for a bit, staying with my mom. So I was with my mom for a bit, and he told me like to see someone else because he didn't want anything to do with me at that point. So I was with my mom. I went on one date with a guy, didn't really care about doing any of that because I was working and, you know, everything else that was going on in my life. So we had like coffee. It was something small. And I let him know about it. And again, another personality flip. I hate you. How could you go out with someone? You're pregnant with my child. And I'm like, well, you literally told me to. You know, you told me that you didn't want me anymore and you don't want this child. And he's like, no, now I don't want you with anyone else. You can't be with anyone else. And is like making all this dictation. Meanwhile, he cheated on me with 3 other women at that time. So while I was pregnant. So anyways, this is all going on and we're getting really close to when I'm about to give birth. So I asked him, I go, I think it's important for you to be there at our daughter's birth and for you to hold her and see her. And I get that you're scared, and this is your first child and this is my first child, but I really want you to be there. And he made a deal with me that the only way he would come to the birth of our daughter is if I agreed to not give our daughter his last name, because he didn't want a girl in his family to have his last name because our daughter wasn't going to be a boy. So I made that agreement with him and I told him that was fine. So in the hospital, I have my daughter and he has an immediate connection with her. It's again, another huge personality flip where he loves her. He wants to be with her. You know, he's apologizing for everything he said. He's telling me he was scared, you know, that he didn't mean anything. He tells me that he doesn't really want anything to do with me, but he wants to raise our daughter together, that he wasn't attracted to me anymore, but he loved our daughter. So I'm like, okay, well, I want my daughter to have her father, especially if you want to be in her life and, you know, how you feel about me, whatever, I'll deal with it. So at that point, I was having postpartum. He was watching our daughter, and so was his father, because we ended up moving out of his mother's house. We moved out of his mother's house because we were living on the south side of Chicago in his mother's house, and it wasn't a good environment for our daughter. So we moved into his father's house, who his father had never been present. Like we had maybe two dinners with his father, a total of when we were together. So it was very odd for his father now all of a sudden to be this huge person involved just because my daughter was born. So we ended up moving in with his father in Palatine, and I immediately noticed things that I wasn't liking. Like this man was so controlling over every single little thing. He controlled what my daughter ate. He controlled what he drank. He controlled where she went. He acted as if he was the father and not my ex, which that made me pretty uncomfortable and I didn't like it. So I started trying to take her to work with me, but I couldn't take her to work with me because I now had a CNA license. I was a CNA and she didn't work well, or not work well, but she cried a lot, screamed a lot, and my clients couldn't handle it. So there's like, you can't really take her to work with you anymore. So I was like, okay, but I still need to work because this man is not working still. So somebody needs to pay the bills. So I was working, and we get to the point where I just can't take the control anymore. It's getting too weird. I tell him, let's go and move into your dad's other apartment, because his dad owned another apartment. So we decided to move into his dad's apartment. And when we moved into his dad's apartment, his dad would still come into the apartment unannounced, no key, just walked in whenever he wanted, would take my daughter whenever he wanted, did not care. When I would go to work, my ex, Tom, I'll just say Tom was constantly dropping her off, even though I'd ask him not to. And that was the way it was always. It was just completely ignoring me, and they were doing whatever they wanted. So I was like, okay, I'm done with this too. This isn't working. So I saved up a bunch of money, moved to Elk Grove Village with everyone, and except for his father, of course. It was me, Tom, and our daughter. Moved to Elk Grove Village. And by that time, my daughter was about 2.5. And I expressed to Tom that I want our daughter to have a sibling. I had never had a sibling. He had a brother. He said a brother really helped him through his life. I had always wanted a sibling because I was an only child, and I felt that would be good for our daughter. I didn't want to have multiple men involved. I just wanted one person, because at that point I was very sure that I wanted to stay with Tom. Things were a lot better. He was very compassionate towards me. He was very caring. It seemed as if he was just really scared, and I was chalking it up as, you know, this man had a really difficult life, a really difficult past, a really controlling father, and I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, basically, which honestly, looking back, I should have never done that. And now going forward with my relationships, I don't do that. I see red flags and I just run and I'm like, I'm done. Okay. I'm not doing this all over again. But at that time, I was just letting all these red flags pile up and was basically ignoring them because I was so in love with Tom and the thought of having this family. So it took nothing for me to get pregnant again. And then I was pregnant with our son, and that pregnancy was literally perfect because he was so excited about having a son. So I had no issues during that pregnancy. He wasn't telling me to kill myself. He wasn't being abusive. He wasn't doing anything wrong because he really wanted to have a son. So this is where it gets odd. So I'm in the hospital. I have our son. We're moved into this new, beautiful place. His father's still trying to be controlling of our daughter. I'm fighting that as well as being pregnant and about to have our son. So I'm in the hospital and I have our son. And it's like night and day from when I had our daughter. Me and my son had an immediate attachment. Like the moment he was born, I was completely attached to him. We got to do skin to skin. It was a very special bond. There was no postpartum. There was no issues. Like, me and my son were literally like two peas in a pod. Everywhere he went, I went. Everywhere I went, he went. I mean, we were completely inseparable. So, anyways, so I have my son, and Tom just did not want to be around my son. He was basically ignoring him from the time he was born. He didn't really like to hold him. When I asked him once if he could watch him, because I literally had to work and I was still working about 3 jobs at that time, and I couldn't take my son to one of my jobs, he actually took him back to me and said, I cannot handle this kid. I can't do it. And that's his son. Like, so he never had any sort of bond with his son. It was very, very odd. And then on top of not having a bond with his son, he started to really resent me and get really mean towards me and was ignoring his son, but was very, you know, attached to his daughter. So anyways, one night I had put our son in his pack and play. I had put him to sleep. I went into my room to go lay down. I was on my phone, just messing around with my phone. And he comes in the door and he literally holds me down. My face is in the pillow. I start trying to get away. He pulls his pants down and he sodomizes me. No lubricant, nothing. And I'm screaming, I'm crying, I'm in total shock. I'm like, what is going on? Like, this is a man that said he loved me and cared about me, and all of a sudden, what is going on? I couldn't believe it. So I'm screaming, I'm crying, I'm telling him to stop. He's not stopping. Then when he's done, he looks at me and he says, how did you enjoy your anal rape? And I was just stunned. I didn't say anything. I couldn't say anything. I just ran into the bathroom and I was crying. And at one point I was in so much pain and I was so scared and mortified. Like my body went limp and I just stared out the window as I tried to crank my head to the side. I couldn't believe what just happened. So I went in the bathroom and I'm crying my eyes out and I'm texting my friend and I'm like, I think I was just raped. Like I told him exactly what happened. He goes, yes, you were just raped. Like, what the hell? So I confront him the next day and I tell him what happened. And he sits there trying to tell me that, oh, I was sexually abused as a kid. I was in a dissociative fugue state. And, you know, I have multiple personalities and I didn't mean to do that to you. And all this garbage, basically. And I'm telling him, like, no, I don't want you. I don't want this. I can't do this. I mean, I was ready to leave right then and there. That I told him I can't even be touched by you. I don't even want to see you right now. I'm just so, I can't believe you would do that to me. And like, this was right after I had disclosed to him that I was sexually abused when I was a kid. So it was just like, it was just mortifying. And after I said all this to him, he was just like, well, you know, I'll get therapy, I'll get help, I'll make sure that I get help. So he agreed to go to therapy. I told him he could stay in the house as long as he was getting help, but that we would not be together anymore. And I told him I was going to see other people. And he said that was fine. He agreed to me seeing other people. Well, even though he agreed, he didn't mean it. Things became very toxic, very abusive. He would call me a whore, a slut, a bitch in front of our kids. he would push me against walls and start grinding on me, or just start trying to, touch me in front of the kids, and I would push his hand away and he wouldn't care. He treated me horribly, was looking at my phone constantly, was, everything I did, it was wrong. One time he had me take a picture of our family, and I didn't take the picture the right way. So I was horrible now at taking pictures. Like, every single thing I did was wrong. It didn't matter what it was. It didn't matter if it was the smallest thing. It was just wrong. And got to the point where he was still taking our daughter to see his dad. And I said, this has got to stop. We're not doing this anymore. So I hired a babysitter, which was my best friend and his mutual friend as well. So we were all friends. And he was fine with me hiring the babysitter. So on top of paying rent, on top of paying a car, on top of paying insurance, on top of paying every single thing I'm paying, and working about 120 hours a week and taking my son to work with me, I was then paying for a babysitter too. And he still was not working or doing anything. So I have this babysitter, and she starts telling me, like, your daughter's got bruises on her. She's acting violently with her toys. She's screaming, she's crying, she's banging her head against the door. She's doing all these things that are signs of basically trauma. And my daughter started saying, like, grandpa was hitting her. And then she said she was being touched. And this was all before the custody case even started. So we sat down with Tom, and she started telling Tom this. And Tom said he would talk to his father, but he never did. We also told Tom that we were going to consult a child psychologist because we were concerned at how she was acting out at 3 years old. And he said that was fine. So I did call up the child psychologist. So we get into February, and with all the stress I was under, with taking care of my son, when being a new mom to my son, and everything else, working 120 hours a week, having just a ridiculous amount of stress, and then the nonsense with his father and my daughter, like, I snapped. And I admit that I snapped. He was telling me every single day to kill myself. And finally, I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And I wanted to die. I was so so sick. I was so sick from everything that was happening. I just wanted to die. And so I checked myself in voluntarily to a hospital, which his friend actually recommended to me and took me to that specific hospital, which now I find highly suspicious, because his friend was backing him the whole custody battle, was even financially helping him through the custody battle. So I feel like this was just a setup to have something on paper that I was, in an institution for a week. So despite me being in an institution for a week, he literally had to come to the institution to ask me for money to pay our rent. So he went to the institution, was like, I need rent money, and I'm still the responsible one paying all the bills and doing everything from an institution. So when I get out of the institution, things are better. He's nicer to me. He's still seeing his therapist. He's telling me he's seeing his therapist at least, and things seem like they're going fine. They went fine for a week. Then I tell him, you need to get a job. I've applied to 200 places for you. I need you to work. I can't do this anymore because I don't want what happened to happen again, because I'm just so, it's so much. I can't do it all on my own. So he agrees to start working. I get him a good job working at a factory, making good money. And so one night I'm in bed. This was March 19th. I'm in bed. I'm looking at my phone again. My son is in his room. We had moved into a house now. We were in Elgin, living in a house that I had gotten for us and that I was paying for. So we're in this beautiful 3-bedroom house. Daughter at the time was with her grandfather. So it was just me and James. So I was at home. He comes in the door and he does the same thing. He grabs me, he holds me down, and without lubricant, without anything, he assaults me yet again. He sodomizes me. I'm literally digging my nails into the mattress, trying to pull myself out from under him, screaming at him to stop. He tells me I won't stop until I come. And after he's done, he pulls out. I run crying and screaming into the bathroom. My hands are literally covering my eyes, and I'm just bawling. And he starts washing his hands, and he flicks the water in my face. And then he walks out the door as if nothing ever happened. So I call my friend up because I can't take it anymore. Because before that, he was also threatening to kill me. He told me that he was going to throw me down the Elgin steps. So those were the steps of our new house. He told me I'd have to explain how a TV fell on top of me 15 times. And before that assault, he told me that if I didn't comply with it, he was going to lock me in the attic. So things were getting to a dangerous and scary level. So I called up my friend who lived in New Hampshire, and I was like, can I stay with you? Can I just stay with you? I need to get out of here. I'm terrified of what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen next. I need to get out of here. And she's like, of course you can stay with me. So the plan was literally to stay for a week, figure things out, create some distance, and get safe. It was never to be to live there or to run away. It was literally just for a week to figure things out so that nothing else bad happened at that point. So he's messaging me and he's talking to me like nothing ever happened. He's like, do you want to go to a flower show tomorrow? And like, I don't even know how to respond to that. And it was like the ultimate gaslight of, I just assaulted you and now I'm asking if you want to go to a flower show. And I was on my PTSD group and I posted like everything that had happened on the PTSD group. And I didn't post that it was an assault because I already had a plan and I didn't want, cops to get in the way of that or anything else. Well, just the way that I posted it and how I described exactly what happened, there were 2 women on there that knew it was a rape. They called it into the police and they had contacted my ex. They had found him on my pictures and then they contacted him. So he starts texting me and he's just like, what, do you want me to go to jail on the first day of my job? How could you do this to me? How could you do this to your family? Like all these things where I'm now getting just absolutely terrified. And I told him, I didn't say in the PTS group that it was a rape. I told him that. He goes, well, anybody would know what it was the way you said it. Because I guess somebody screenshotted him the post and whatever. So we get to the next day. We're at his dad's house and we're with the kids and we're having like breakfast with his dad. And Tom just up and leaves randomly. I don't know where he went. He didn't tell me what he went. So he starts messaging me once he comes back. And I asked him like where he went and what was going on. And he tells me that, he saw a therapist and he explained exactly what I told him had happened because I confronted him early that morning. I told him again, you raped me. This can't keep going on. You're hurting me. I can't keep doing this with you. And so he was like, oh, I talked to the therapist about what I did to you. And they said I experienced a dissociative fugue and I need to lower my stress levels. And I'm going to be having an expert on narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and multiple personality disorder. Basically admitting I'm a sociopath, I have multiple personality disorder, and all these other things he was admitting to in these messages.
Is this the messages that we have? I don't mean to interrupt the story, but I want to make sure if these are the ones that we have, I want to make sure we can show them.
Yeah, I agree.
There's 2 sets of messages. The messages that you already showed are from the first assault, along with the text message. I don't think you guys showed the text message though, where he admits also to telling me to kill myself, but says that those were just words from a loved one, so they don't matter. That was the gray and the yellow text message. These were the messages from the first assault.
These are from the first one. Okay.
I think we do have the other one somewhere, but it's the
And
gray and
he
yellow
admits in these from the first assault, like he almost beat a kid to death. He talks about how much he loves me, but that he would be more of a risk to the kids regarding any sort of abuse, whatever. And he's talking about this multiple personality that he's had that has no sense of ethics, no sense of right or wrong, etc. Like this, obviously, like this person's very evil. So those were the messages from the first assault. I did not send you the messages from the second assault.
Okay.
I can do that a different time and you can share them how you want. These are also from the first assault. And he says, stop pretending like we were ever going to be before I raped you. And I said, I didn't think we'd ever be where we were when you told me to kill myself 7 times, but somehow we did because I put in the effort because my ego was never as important to me as it was to you. And then he says, words from a loved one hurt. It's not showing the full text.
Oh shoot.
It might just be the way that it's cropped.
I think it's the way it's cropped. It says something like words from a loved one hurt less and the trauma lasts, and it cuts off right there.
Yeah.
I'll try to find the full.
He actually says that words from a loved one hurt less than and the trauma is less than being actually fucking raped. So he admits again that he assaulted me, and blatantly, without any sympathy, any empathy, nothing. So back to what happened with his dad's house. So we're messaging back and forth. He's telling me he needs less stress, this and that. He's telling me that he has these blackouts at work, that he goes places he doesn't even know where he's going. It's all like really messed up stuff. It's literally like stuff that you hear about serial killers talking about. It was terrifying. So the next day I have work. So I'm at work. My boss already knows what's going on. I gave her the heads up that she's taking me to the train station, or to the airport, to the airport to get on the flight to go to New Hampshire to see my friend. So he was supposed to drop off James to me. So he comes to my work with James, and he corners me. And he's like, how could you do the one thing that would make me kill myself? And I said, you know, you keep raping me and threatening to kill me. What else was I supposed to do? And my boss comes out, her husband comes out, my client's husband comes out, and they're all seeing like what's going on and trying to get him to leave. And he goes, I want you to come alone with me in the car. And my boss says, no, she's not going anywhere with you. And he said, I just want you to know, if I'm the one going, talking about killing himself, that I won't be the only one. So right then and there, he threatened my kids' lives. So they keep telling him to leave. He leaves. Then I go into the bathroom because I get a phone call from him. So the call from him was, you know, since we're no longer together and everything's official, I can be honest with you. And I was like, okay, honest with me about what? What are you talking about? He goes, I never went to therapy. He goes, I never had any of these disorders. I just did it to keep assaulting you. And that was that. So after I heard that, all the sympathy, all the empathy I had for this man, everything I felt for this man literally just left my body. I was absolutely done, because the whole reason that I was letting any of this go on as long as it was because I felt sorry for him. And he had told me that he was severely sexually abused as a kid and physically abused as a kid, and would tell me all these horrible things that he went through. And I was very empathetic as well as sympathetic to that. And I just wanted him to get help and for us all to have a family and to be okay. And I realized that was wrong. I should have been thinking about my children, not about him getting help. And I'm very disgusted with myself for those actions and those choices, because my focus should have been the kids at that time, not him. So I tell my boss, like, I need to go to the police station because I'm going to report this assault. I go to the police station. I report the assault. I have the rape kit done, everything. They pick him up. They arrest him. They take him in. So the detective then meets with me. They have my car because they picked him up driving it. So the car is only in my name. I do not drive. I have a medical condition where I cannot drive. But the car is in my name because he never had the credit to get a car. So I get the car. The car is in my name. They give me back my car because it's rightfully mine, basically. So but before that happens, I'm with the detective. I'm telling her everything that happened. And she's like, you know, we're not going to really charge this because it's a domestic thing. And it's a he said, she said, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, well, have you seen the messages? And she's like, what? I go, there's literally text messages of him admitting blatantly to assaulting me. And she goes, no, I haven't. So I show her these messages and she goes, okay, I need to have this reviewed by the state's attorney. She goes, I want you to go get an order of protection. So that was on Friday. And Saturday, Sunday, they're closed. So you can't go until Monday to get an order of protection. So all that happens. They give me my car. I go home. I'm with the kids. Everything's fine. Monday I get a message from his friend that he's been released the next day. I'm being told he was released. I'm like, why is he released? I don't understand this. They were going to go over it. Why are there not any charges? And his friend doesn't tell me anything else. So the detective doesn't call me, officer doesn't call me, nobody calls me nobody messages me but his friend. So I call the detective. I'm like, what is going on here? She goes, well, he said that he won't come to the house. I go, well, you don't know if he's going to come to the house or not. Just because he tells you he's not going to come to the house doesn't mean he's not going to come to the house. So I'm freaking out. I'm really scared. Thankfully, he doesn't come to the house, but an officer, the same officer that had talked to me and discussed everything with me, he came and he gave me all the paperwork regarding my sexual assault. And I just looked at him real sad. I'm like, what is going on here? And I go, am I going to have to share custody with my rapist? And he just looks at the ground and he goes, I hope not. And was just miserable when he did it. And he gives me over the paperwork, and like none of the paperwork is filled out. There's not even a signature on it for where I'm read my rights as a victim. Like nothing was filled out that should have been filled out. So that was all very suspect to me originally. So now we get to Monday. I do my emergency order protection. The emergency order protection is immediately granted. In fact, the judge even said, he goes, I'm afraid what would happen to you if I didn't sign this. So he signs it. There's no issue with that. Then we go into April 11th, which is the plenary order of protection hearing. So on April 11th, Tom admits in court that he sent all those messages. All the messages are put into court. The judge reads the messages. He rules. He asked Tom if he sent them. Tom admits to sending them. He admits to assaulting me, but said he did it to break up with me. He even said in court that I was the best thing that ever happened to him. So the judge rules that the kids are in my custody, that the order of protection will be granted for 2 years, and everything seems to be going fine. My lawyer tells me that everything's going the way it should go. Don't worry about anything. Because I told her I had to work, and she goes, what we're discussing the next court date is just going to be the supervisors that we're going to have. So I was like, okay, all right, no problem. So I'm at work. I get this call from her, and she tells me, I don't know what happened in court today. I don't know why this is going on, but they're not having Tom supervised. And at this point, there was no psych eval. There's no nothing. So he was getting 6 hours a day with my kids 4 days a week, but no overnights. So the first time that my daughter comes back from one of the overnights, she's got these little bruises on the back of her legs. She's telling me that grandpa hit her. She's got this dark yellow and gray bruise underneath her right butt cheek. And then she had this, what looked like a strap mark that was very large on her lower back. Now she had already had a mark there, which she had already said the grandpa hit her from the mark before, but now it was even bigger and it was more, noticeable. So it was gray instead of red, like a gray purple. So anyways, I call up the babysitter who was my friend, and I call her because she has friends, or she has parents that were cops. So I was like, what should I do here? I'm in this custody case. I don't want to upset the apple cart. What should I do? And she goes, take her to the police station and have them document everything. So I need to actually backtrack. So when they gave me back my car, I went through my car, and there was this hard drive in the back of the car. It was like in the trunk area where the spare tire would be, in a secret compartment where the spare tire would be. So I find this giant hard drive, and I had seen the hard drive before, and I was never curious about it because I never had a reason not to believe Tom or to think that he was lying to me. But after he admitted that all this was bullshit, he never went to therapy, and that he just did to assault me, I was very curious. So I took the hard drive in. I had my roommates with me at the time, and we looked at the hard drive on her computer, and there was these animated, disgusting, pornographic images of children, like 3 and 4 year olds, doing sexual things with 3 and 4 year olds, and then doing sexual things with adults. It was all this just disgusting content that I couldn't take. And I already knew that it probably wasn't illegal, but I just wanted to call the detective anyway. So I call the detective, and she goes, I want the whole hard drive. And I said, well, we looked at it on this computer. Do you need the computer as well? And she said, no, we don't need the computer. Took the hard drive in. So that I was told there was an investigation into the hard drive. So that was that. So anyways, my daughter, like, back to where we were. So when I go to the police, I let the police know, the Palatine police, what's going on. I show them the pictures of my daughter with the bruising. I show them that there's an investigation into the child pornography, that there's still a review on my assault, like all these different things. So they say based upon that, they want to go to Northwest Community Hospital to have my daughter looked at. So my daughter goes to Northwest Community Hospital. She's diagnosed with contusion and domestic concerns. She also had like a red and irritated private area at that point, and that she said was hurting her. So I figured she just had like a UTI or infection or something like that, because she, that's something that little girls get, like 3-year-olds sometimes, because of wiping. So anyways, when the nurse basically told me that she had no concerns about any sort of, or not the nurse, I'm sorry, the doctor. She told me she had no concerns about any sexual abuse, and that I could take my daughter home, that they weren't going to do a forensic kit, and they found no reason to do it. So I was like, okay, no problem. The police were pushing for me to get a forensic kit done, which I didn't even think was necessary. So I told them, no, I'm going by the doctor, and that's what we're doing. So I go home with my daughter, with my son. I have to go to work the next day. I take my son to work with me. My daughter's with my roommates, and I get this call from a Dr. Gregory at Children's Laurie's Hospital, and she goes, I want you to take Sasha in. I was forwarded all the information from the police report, as well as the doctors that saw your daughter, and I want you to have her come in for a forensic exam. And I said, well, the doctor there said it wasn't really necessary. And she goes, I think it is. I was like, okay, fine. So then she calls me back and she goes, never mind, I don't want to do it because there's no investigation into Jerry Biel, which was the grandfather of my daughter. And that's the person she's alleging is doing all this stuff to her, is hurting her. So I go, well, there is, because the DCFS worker literally came to my house and dropped off the paperwork and said he was under investigation. So she said, okay, bring her in then on Monday. So I bring her in on Monday, and her behavior is just so bizarre. Like, she doesn't notice being anally swabbed. She grabbed the attendant's breasts, and then when she was asked to open her legs, she didn't open her legs. She literally opened her labia and just kept opening it back and forth. And the doctor told her to stop, and she wouldn't stop. She kept doing it, and he had to basically raise his voice and go, stop. So all that happened. All of that was strange. So I go to my attorney. I let her know all this is going on. There was also video because I had put up cameras around my house due to the order of protection. So there was video of my daughter talking about being hit in her private area, her bathing suit zone, that daddy was hitting James in the head, and all these things. And like, while she's talking about these really graphic things that are happening to her and her brother, she's like laughing and smiling and running around the house while she's talking about it. So it was all really odd that she was doing it. Like, it was just normal things that she was talking about. And the whole conversation started with, Mommy, I want to talk about hitting. And it was just completely out of the blue. So I take all this to my attorney, and my attorney's like, okay, based on everything we have, I want to go for an emergency removal of custody and have you full custody, basically. So we go into court. It's said that there's this video, there's all this evidence, everything else. And the judge feels like, okay, well, she can't be around grandpa then. So he says that none of the kids can be around grandpa. Well, his attorney pipes up and is like, well, he lives with his dad. So we can't do that because he lives with his dad. So the judge says, literally, and I quote, he can just go in another room. So nothing changes. Grandpa apparently can just go in another room. So I asked my attorney, I go, what can we do about this? What is going on? She goes, I don't know. She didn't even know what to say. And she said, no, we can't change this. That's the judge's orders. That's what he said to do. So that's that. So May 2nd was supposed to be our evidentiary hearing, and a GAL was now put on this case. So the GAL is doing her investigation kind of while all this is going on and looking into everything and talking to witnesses and yada, yada, yada. So May 2nd, they wanted to go into chambers. My lawyer specifically asked that it stay out of chambers. So I'm sitting, and my attorney's trying to speak to the judge. The judge will not let my attorney speak. The judge will not let my attorney show any evidence. The only person that the judge wants to listen to is the guardian litem. And the guardian litem is sitting there basically saying that I'm crazy, that I had to hospitalize myself, and all these things, and then goes into graphic detail talking about my abuse as a child. So while she's doing that, my ex is describing the same things. Tom is describing the same things that are going on with our daughter, and is talking about her like crawling on the floor and being overly sexual and all these other disturbing things, and trying to blame it on my family member who my daughter has never even seen, and was only seeing his father. So anyways, so while this is all happening, I'd become overly upset because I don't even know what's going on anymore. This was all just so unbelievable. And I storm out of the courtroom and I say, you're protecting a pedophile, and I leave because I didn't know what to think. I was so sick and I was so disgusted. So now my attorney is asking me, the judge won't listen to me. He won't let me share evidence. Can you please just fire me? And I was like, no, I'm not going to fire you, my attorney, and I'm a single mom and I wouldn't be able to afford another retainer. Like, I have to keep you on. So we get into like the next week before the it's about the next week, and she calls me and she's like, okay, if I'm going to stay on this case, I need $1,000 from you every month. I was like, no, I can't give you $1,000 every month. I mean, that's a crazy thing to ask, especially if you're not doing any work. Why would I give you $1,000 a month? So she says that she'd have to withdraw. So I said, okay, well, if that's the only option, then that's what we're going to have to do here because I don't have that kind of money. So I grant her permission to withdraw. That's all that was supposed to happen. May 15th was her withdrawal. So I'm at work and I get this call from my roommates who are with my daughter. I'm with my son. And they're like, the cops are here to take the kids. I'm like, what? The cops are here to take the kids. They have an order signed by the judge in the GAL that Tom is getting temporary custody. I said, put me on the phone with the cops. And I'm talking to this one cop who had already dealt with because Tom had attempted to violate my order of protection by threatening me in the police station. And I had dealt with this man before and I just told him to document it. And I was like, what is going on here? And he goes, I don't even know what's going on. I'm going to call the FBI because he was just so perplexed at what was going on. Like nobody understood it. So anyways, I'm like, I don't want to give up my kids. What should I do here? And he's just like, you have to. It's going to get worse for you if you don't. Just be calm, get an attorney and, figure it out. And I said, I can't even leave work. I'm with my son. I'm with a client. I'm a CNA. Like, can you give me till 8 o'clock? So they said, yeah. So clearly I'm no danger to my children because the police leave and give me till 8 p.m. to turn my kids over. So I get home. I have my kids. I hug them. I love them. I kiss them. I have a bag packed for James ready to go and everything else. And he comes and picks them up with his father and takes them away from me. So I'm calling like every attorney I can think of and I'm like totally blackballed. Nobody wants to take this case. And I'm just freaking out because I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? So I go into court and I demand an evidentiary hearing and they won't give me an evidentiary hearing. So what also happened at this illegal ex parte thing that they did was they assigned my best friend, who was also the babysitter, to be my court supervisor. So I got 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I had to work on Wednesday. They knew I had to work on Wednesday. I could not change that. So I was only being able to exercise Tuesday and Wednesday. And they never even asked her if she could do this. They just appointed her. So if she couldn't do it, then she would have been in contempt of court. So they assign all this. And while this is all going on, my daughter is constantly coming to us with bruising. My son has a bruise on his forehead. She's making the same allegations. And my court supervisor is writing all this down, sending it to the GAL and calling DCFS. And she's like, this is not right. Like something is going on here. We're very concerned. And my daughter was showing increased behavioral issues and increased trauma responses where she would like disassociate for long periods of time. One time she just like disassociated for 20 minutes and then she just went, smile. And like, it was just bizarre. She would just be doing these weird things and acting out stuff with her toys and everything else and constantly making allegations in regards to grandpa, which is Tom's dad. So now we get to August. So in August, I get this message from Tom that James is in the hospital. I was like, why is James in the hospital? What is going on? And he goes, he's got a prolapsed rectum. He's been in the hospital for 3 days. First thing that's going on in my mind, maybe it's constipation, maybe it's straining, maybe he's potty training, any of that kind of stuff. But then when he tells me 3 days, that is completely abnormal. The way a prolapsed rectum works is typically it comes out and then it goes right back in, or you put on a gloved finger and then you just put the prolapse back in. You don't need to stay in a hospital for 3 days. So I call up the nurses and I'm like, what is going on with my son? And they go, we don't know. It's popped out 3 times already today, even after a surgical procedure. So I'm freaking out. I'm calling the GAL. I'm like, I need to see my son. And they allow me to go see my son. So I'm on the road with my boss, ready to see my son. And all of a sudden I get this call. The message on our family wizard from Tom that I have to have my court supervisor with me to see my son. And I'm like, I can't get my court supervisor right now to see my son because she's with her child. And I'm with my boss right now. Is that good enough? So I come to, it was Alexian Brothers and Hoffman Estates. And they are not comfortable with me just being with my boss. They literally asked the head of the pediatric department to watch me with my child for half an hour. So this woman apparently had nothing better to do than supervise me with my child for half an hour. So I get in there. I see my son, his buttocks is all taped up. He had just had an enema. He looks miserable, but when he sees me, like he lights up and he's so excited to see me and we play and we laugh and we have fun. And I'm trying to figure out what's going on because I see there's a meal chart on the board and I go, is my son supposed to stay over again? And she's like, yes, he is. So why now do you have a child staying in a hospital for 4 days with a prolapsed rectum? It just, nothing added up. Nothing made any sense. I'm getting even more concerned. So Tom messages me that he wants me to talk to the social worker before I leave. And I didn't even allege any abuse at this point. I was concerned, but I never said like, oh, there's abuse and this is what happened. So I thought it was really weird that he wanted me to talk to the social worker. So I talked to the social worker and I was like, did you call DCFS? And I go, this clearly looks like it would be a case of some sort of neglect. I don't know what's going on here. This doesn't make any sense. And she goes, no, I felt no reason to call DCFS. And I was like, you felt no reason to call DCFS? Like, do you know the history here? Do you know this? He's being investigated for child pornography? Do you know this, that, and the other? And she's like, are you telling me how to do my job? And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to deal with this. So I politely walked away, didn't get into it with her, and I left. So then we get in the car. My boss is like, are you going to call DCFS? And I was like, no, they haven't helped at all before. They're not going to help. This is a custody battle. They're not going to do anything. Why would I call DCFS? And she goes, well, I'm going to call them. So she calls them. And then shortly after she calls them, I get a message from Tom that my son is being emergency discharged from the hospital. Now, they could not do this because my son had not gone 24 hours without prolapse. So he says, do you want to have your visitation with the kids tomorrow? And I said, of course. So he brings over the kids to me. We meet at the Elgin Library. He gives me the kids, and then I go home. I'm changing my son's diaper, and my daughter comes over and wants to hold my son's hand while I'm changing his diaper. So while she's holding his hand, I start noticing that his anus is like literally pulsating. And it's so huge that it's just pulsing. Like it looks like it's breathing. So my daughter starts tugging on me that she has to go to the bathroom. So I follow my daughter into the bathroom. So does my court supervisor. We leave the door open a crack because my court supervisor has to look at every single thing that I'm doing. So I'm with my daughter in the bathroom. While I'm with my daughter in the bathroom, she goes, somebody hurt James. I go, who hurt James? And she goes, Grandpa put a toothbrush in James' butt. She goes, he was screaming and crying. I tried to carry him off the bed, but Grandpa pushed me down. And she said this like it was a totally normal thing. And she also said that she was the one that had to pull it out. And she's like, this was totally normal, that an everyday event, like eating breakfast. She was so just, it was scary how normal this was for her to say. And so my court supervisor heard it. She immediately contacted the GAL. The GAL said DCFS was looking into it. My ex comes and picks up the kids, and then he messages me saying that DCFS is taking the kids and that nobody can know where the kids are, including him. And I'm like, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. They haven't given me a safety plan. There's nothing, there's no paperwork. What's going on here? So I get a call from the DCFS worker, Karen Johnson-Wren, at 9 p.m. and she tells me the same thing, that they're taking custody of the kids, that I can't know where they are, that Tom can't know where they are, and that this was all my fault. And she didn't tell me why it was all my fault, but she just said it was all my fault. So after she says that, I start calling different police stations. I start calling different DCFS places. I'm like, is there any investigation into me? Is there anything going on here that I need to know about why I cannot see my kids? And every single person tells me, no, there's no investigation into me at all. So I go to the Palatine police station. I try to report my kids missing. So I'm reporting my kids missing, and they're like, you won't be the first person to try to look for your kids, and you won't be the last. And then I just leave because they're not helping me. They don't care about me. They're not trying to do anything. They said, you'll find out what's going to happen in court tomorrow. So I go to court, and in court, everyone's acting very strange. And this was the August 14th court date. Everyone's acting really strange. All of a sudden, they don't even want me to see the kids without paying to see the kids. And in order to pay to see your kids, it's a paid supervisor. So you're admitting you're a danger to your kids. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. You need to give me an evidentiary hearing. I'm not going to have this affect me in every court afterwards and to say that I'm a danger to my kids, because I'm not a danger to my kids. So I wasn't able to see my kids for like 3 months because I refused to sign the paperwork, which would basically prevent me from ever having any sort of rights of my children. So we get into October. So I get this phone call from this doctor, October 31st. And he's like, you need to come into the hospital. And he goes, James is very sick. And I was like, what do you mean he's very sick? Like, what's going on? And the doctor tells me, he goes, you need to come into the hospital and you need to come right now. And I thought this was very odd, because before, I had to be supervised. Why all of a sudden now am I able to go to the hospital to see my son? And he's like, you need to come now. And I said, okay. I called my mom. I figured something out. I took an Uber. I met her at the hospital. So I meet her at the hospital, and this attendant comes up to us, and the attendant says, let me take you into the room. So she takes us into the room, and my son's not there. And I'm immediately like, where is my son? The doctor comes out. I'm like, where is my son? I need to see my son. And the doctor, just looks down at the ground, and he says he didn't make it. And I'm like, what do you mean he didn't make it? He was fine. Where is my son? What is going on? And he goes, oh, there was something maybe about cough medicine, but we don't know. We're all looking into it. And I just I need to see my son. And he gives me my son, and my son is still slightly warm, and I'm holding my son, and, having my last moments with him, and I'm crying. I see these what looks like red marks all over his stomach. And I point it out to the nurse, and the nurse is like, oh, that's just what happens when people die. Well, I've seen people die in front of me, and it doesn't look like slap marks on a stomach. So I immediately knew this was odd. And then right after I mentioned that to her, she forced us to leave. She goes, the coroner's coming now. You need to leave. We have an expert that's going to look into this. My grandmother's on the way, and we couldn't even stay for my grandmother to come. They just made us leave. So we ended up leaving, and I had tried to go into court for an emergency motion because I still wasn't seeing my daughter at this point, and I need to see my daughter. The Judge Cruz, completely ignored it, didn't care, said my social media antics were more important than the fact that my child just died, and didn't even allow me to see my daughter. Next court date, I have a lawyer, and she's pushing for me to be able to see my child. Judge Cruz lets me see my child with my mother supervising me in a Barnes & Noble. So that went on for a week. After that happens, I'm basically given 50-50 custody, because I was seeing her 3.5 days, and he was seeing her 3.5 days. But when he was seeing her, DCFS was involved, and his mother was the guardian. Whereas when I was seeing her, it was just me. Nobody was supervising me. There was no guardian. There was nothing going on. So I was, let's see here. We go into the autopsy. So their original, so Palatine police puts out this press release before an autopsy is even done. It's less than 24 hours. They put out this autopsy report, or they put out this press release saying that there was no foul play, and they have no person in interest. It's no foul play, even though my son was found in the bed with his lips blue, foaming and bleeding from the mouth and nose. And it was an adult bed that he was found in, and there was a basket of bloody tissues. They said no foul play. So I waited almost, I think it was 3 or 4 months to get their results. And the only thing they could tell me was undetermined natural. And I said, that's ridiculous. I don't believe that for a second. And I said, there's no way that that's the cause of my son's death. I said, absolutely not. I don't believe that. So with the community, I raised over $5,000. I got an independent autopsy done. The preliminary findings for the independent autopsy were concerns for suffocation due to the bruising around his mouth and his nose, the deep tissue bruising on his back. But unfortunately, with a suffocation case, suffocation is one of the most difficult things to prove forensically, especially if there's no fibers. And because the police did not do a thorough investigation and they just took everything that Tom and his family said at word, there was no case there. So when my son was given to the forensic pathologist that I hired, he didn't have his brain with him, he didn't have his heart with him, and he didn't have any of his neck organs, which include his hyoid bone, which there would have been no reason to take the hyoid bone. And the doctor told me it was, or the medical examiner said it was due to upper respiratory infection, that you would never take the hyoid bone due to upper respiratory infection. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So almost a year later, finally, my independent forensic pathologist is able to view these organs. And she comes out that my son died from hypoxia, brain swelling, and basically choked on his own spinal fluid and suffocated on it. And that's how he passed away, because he had a cervical spinal cord injury. So this is all taken into court, blows up in the media for a bit. And I'm having the same basic custody that I had before, where it's 3.5 days. And I have overnights, and then he has 3.5 days and he has overnights. And at this point, the DCFS was gone because they went by the original autopsy, which said undetermined natural. So everyone is aware that this is all going on. So I am approached by my attorney. I'm sorry, did I lose you guys?
No, I'm here.
Okay.
Oh God. Maybe the connection was bad.
Yeah.
That's a bad part to drop off. I need.
There she is.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so I'm approached by my attorney, and we were given this petition from his attorney for contempt. Basically, there was a gag order placed in August that said, and that was when my son was having all the issues with his rectum, that I could not go on social media, I could not talk about it, blah, blah, blah. Well, I did it anyways because I needed to get awareness out about what was going on. So they were trying to put me in jail for 6 months without jury or trial or anything. And they told me that they were going to do this if I did not sign 50-50 custody with Tom. So they were threatening to take away my daughter, put me in jail if I did not sign this custody. And I believe that's because it would make them look very bad regarding the death of my son and everything that went on. So I was forced into signing this. I even contacted the media and I go, I was forced into signing this. I did this against my will because I was being threatened to never see my daughter again and with jail. So once I signed this, I was able to get the medical records for my son. And I was absolutely stunned. There's over 500 pages of medical records. It showed that my son was dying back in August due to the prolapsed rectum alone, that he was high risk for injury, death, and complications, and that there was a concern of a anal penetrative sexual assault by a children's law specialist. So all these different things were coming out. So clearly my son's death was not natural. It was not something that could be explained. It was not something that was normal. And that's where I'm at right now, is I have these medical records. I have this new autopsy. I am protesting for my son. I am trying to get answers. I'm at 50-50 custody right now with literally a man who admitted to raping me and a man that hurt my family in ways that are just unfathomable. And all I want is for justice for my son, because there's no explanation. There's no medical backing unless there's an underlying condition for a prolapsed rectum that was the size of an orange. And it's just sick. And the whole thing is sick. And it just makes me so angry. And just, I hate telling this story, but if it's not told, it's going to happen to someone else's child. And I could not bear to have this happen to anyone else's child. And my son was everything to me, and he was taken by this monster, and this man doesn't even care. I mean, the amount of times that he has called my protest a clown show, that I'm an idiot, that I'm a retard, all of these horrible things like he said to me in my pursuit of justice for our son. And he has never once asked for anything to be looked at, to be gone over, nothing. And he was the last person to see my son alive.
Well, this story is so sad. I can't believe this. You know, her first in the first place, her rights were violated by both judges for an overly broad and unlawful gag order prohibiting her from posting public evidence about her case, and could face up to 6 months in jail if she didn't stop posting to Justice for James. That is her First Amendment right to do so, and it's protected under the U.S. Constitution. You have the judges that gave both of those children over to an admitted rapist and child porn possessor, putting his sister in danger by placing her in the same home then Mr. Pirtle, the Garden at Latham, glossing over the opinion of a certified child protection specialist who had concerns about anal penetration of sexual abuse on James. This is ridiculous. You know, I got a thing in wondering, maybe these people that were involved in child pornography and sex trafficking. I don't see how this, it just infuriates me on this. So please help Cara by signing the petition. The link to the petition will be in the description of this video. You can also see the rest of this interview by Unmasked. I will leave that link also in the description of this video. Thanks for watching. Please share this video everywhere you can and get the people to sign that petition. Thank you. Have a good night.